We're talking about online digital books and publications that might just have your ancestors in them, and where you can find them in archives and libraries online, all in an effort to help you with your family history research. We have a special guest with us today, but more on that in just a moment. If this is your first time here, my name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family research. Now, don't forget that Genealogy TV has a website, a newsletter, and a Facebook page. You want to get hooked up with those. Links for all of that are in the show notes below, but don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so that you don't miss any of these videos. If you like the videos, consider becoming a channel member. You can do so by clicking the join button right next to the subscribe button. If you don't see it, you might need to subscribe first. All right, this is a footnotes episode. Well, I call them footnotes because it's in the footnotes where the real sources are. Today's real source is DIANE RICHARD. She is a professional genealogist out of the Raleigh, North Carolina area. She is the publisher of the North Carolina Genealogical Society Journal and the owner of Mosaic Research and Project Management, also known as Mosaic RPM, as well as a regular guest here on Genealogy TV. So DIANE can be found at mosaicrpm.com if you're looking for her. She is a very busy lady, and so she has been gracious enough with her time to share with us her favorite go-to resources regarding a variety of online digital books and publications that might help you with your family history research. She's going to show us how to find them from the comfort of your home. Oh, and she has been gracious enough to put together a handout for us. That'll be available to all viewers, and I'll be sharing that information on where to download that document a little bit later in the video. So hold on to your hat. Here we go. DIANE, welcome back. I know you have some more resources for us. I'm super excited. I know so many people really love these online resources, and you, lady, are just full of knowledge. And so thanks for joining us again.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for having me, Connie. I love sharing online resources. I guess it just says, as we've discussed sometimes before, it's nice to stay home in your pajamas and be able to do some research. So I do that a lot. And let me pull up my slides here. And excellent. So basically, I'm kind of grouping these resources into categories, and that's part of so that I find it helps me think about how I want to use them. So the first thing I want to talk about are digital book, and I've kind of put scholarly publication resources. Because a huge component of actually what I'm talking about are not genealogical specific resources. These are just resources that social historians use, people studying in colleges and schools are using. So they're not in the typical genealogical world, but I use them on a daily basis. So with that, let's jump in, get my mouse working. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Internet Archive.
Let's go for it.
And what I want to point out here is Internet Archive is a huge collection of all kinds of materials. Materials are freely available to anybody to use. They are materials from around the world. It's not just US focused. And you can see my little blue arrow that just popped up. There's over 15 million items in the ebooks and text category. And this is where genealogists can really find some gems, because there's old genealogical journals, there's books that were created, family histories, abstracts, transcripts, historical context, church records. The list really goes on. And so if I'm looking to see if a book's been digitized on a topic relevant to my research, I like to come here. And it does have a blog, so I just like to point that out, because a blog can be a useful way to get the newest news. And newest news would be things like when the copyright restrictions have gone away for a certain year or a period of years, then they'll put a notice out to say, hey, we can now have books up to 1924, for example, where for a long time you can only have public access to books up to 1923 type thing. So I find that kind of useful. And what's neat on Internet Archives is you do have some neat artificial collections that have been created. And one of them is called Religion in North Carolina. And it has over 6,000 church histories, newsletters, records, etc., covering across the various faiths in North Carolina. And it's just a great resource. If I'm trying to find out what churches were in a certain area where my ancestors lived, I will come here. I'll try to find out if there's a history about it, because church histories are just important to us genealogists as people histories, because churches were dividing, coming together, morphing with other things, changing, having conflicts, etc. And by reading the church history, I can find out where else I might want to look for records, and do records survive? Do they have membership lists, things like that?
Now
And
that's
this is just,
now for those who've never been to the Internet Archive before, I believe this was also called the Wayback Machine at one time.
well, actually, I'm going to talk about the Wayback Machine in a little bit, because it's a separate component of the Internet Archive.
Now, this is not just the North Carolina. I know you're showing religion in North Carolina, but this is not just the North Carolina repository.
This is worldwide. In fact, my next example is from like the Library of Virginia, that they have created a page, if you will, on the Internet Archive. This is literally international. You can find non-English language publications. So I mean, it's a place I frequently go, because I love being able to access those older books that were created that may not even be in a lot of libraries anymore, because one, they weren't put in a lot of libraries to begin with, but second, they've aged out, or libraries are always thinning their collections. And unfortunately, sometimes books like these are what disappear. So, so this was just an example of religion in North Carolina. It's one of the first big projects I knew about. This is just showing that the Library of Virginia has a page, and notice it has a page where it has pages for the member libraries in Virginia. So if you're doing Virginia research, you could sit here and go and see, what does the Portsmouth Public Library have? So you're doing research at Portsmouth, Norfolk, Jamestown area. You want to find out what might be available there. It's an option. And this collection is over 4,000 items.
I love the layout.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to read now.
Yes, it's, you know, it's if you look at it as a very simple backdrop, but to me, I just like the visual, and I always organize it this way. And just as a little tip, something to remember for everybody watching is at the top here, or where you have options to manipulate this further. So you could sort things by date published and creator, but let me be honest, sometimes the date tags aren't perfect on here, so I have a tendency to ignore that. But you also can shift how it visually looks to you over in this upper right-hand corner. And so I always recommend that everybody play around with it. I just like what you see here is the default I have set up, because I like to look at it this way.
Now, is that year in the left-hand column where it shows the year? It says media type and year and stuff.
Yes.
Is that
so if
year
you have
of publication or year of the records?
It should be the year of the publication. Yes. So it's really year of the publication, because what they're doing is they're only culling certain information about it. But the thing to recognize is I'm showing you just 2 projects, because I just wanted to share that there are projects here. But often what I do on the website is you can search on any place, and I'll put it in quotes. So I'll search on Henrico County, you know, put it in quotes, and then just see what pops up. And then once that pops up, then I'll start refining it, because I'll go, oh, okay, these are all the things listed for Henrico County, and I'll start looking to see if them seem to be abstracts or transcript. You know, what's the nature of the material? And with any resource, just recognize there are going to be some counties you might find that there's 1,000 results, and you might have other counties you find there's like 10. But there's a lot on here, and it includes government reports, county reports, state level reports. I mean, there's just a real smorgasbord of resources. And I always figure it takes just a few minutes to research for the locale you're looking at, and see if there's some nice digitized books that you can access, you know, from the comfort of home, as we say. And then this is just an example of showing you what the window looks like. So this happened to be a Petersburg, Virginia high school yearbook. called the missile. And so you have a window here, and when you're in the window, the search at the top, which is white, is going to be a search for the whole website. And one improvement that came about a few years ago that I love is this search box here. See, it says search inside. That means I can search just on this particular document or book. So I'm searching on a certain surname, then I just type that surname in. I'm searching on a particular church, I just put the name of the church in, and then what's going to happen is down on this bottom slide, it's going to literally put little hash marks everywhere it found your search term. And then what you can do is just put your mouse on a hash mark and then click on it. So I wanted to see what was inside this, for example.
Isn't that fun? I love doing that.
It is. It's just because, and you know, when you have a small book too, you can flip the pages if you want and everything, but I start with the search. And then if I go, you know, that search isn't finding what I want, because the search is done using optical character recognition. You know, they applied OCR to it, so it's not perfect. So sometimes you may know a name's in there and it's just not being picked up with the OCR. So I will sometimes check at the back of a book, go to the very end, look at its index. What does its own index have?
I did this very same technique, searching for my Randolph County, North Carolina ancestors. So my search criteria was Randolph County, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And then I found a book, and then within the book, I used this search box that you're showing here.
Yep.
For Henley, and I got a ton of stuff about my ancestors. It was awesome.
Oh, I mean, I become like a kid in a candy shop sometimes. And I just put this up here just to show you, this is what a full 2-page spread college yearbook looks like at that time. And that's the thing you can do too, is once you find something, you can then unload, you put it, you can do a screen capture of the image, etc. But this is such an overlooked resource because people assume they have to go to a library to access historical digitized books. And this is so much more fun. Yeah. So that's kind of the story of Internet Archive.
Well, now you can do something similar with Google Books, right?
Yes, you can do something similar with Google Books. And I put Internet Archive here because I think of it as being a bigger books that are freely available. So if I'm on Internet Archive and I find a book listed here, there are a few exceptions that you can maybe loan for 14 days. By far, though, the majority of material here, you're free to access. There's just no question. Now, when we start getting to Google Books, what happens, and this is a Google Books page, Google Books has a selection of differing levels of access to the material on Google Books. Google Books is a really simple search box. It literally looks like if you're doing the Google search engine or any search engine. So again, I recommend using quotations around certain locations, names, etc. for the first time. And when you do that, put in your search term, you're going to get results that look something like this. This was a search on Culpeper County, which happens to be where my dad lives, but did not grow up, but it's someplace fun for me to search. There's also a new interface that Google Books is unveiling. I'm not showing that here because I haven't played with it enough. So when you go to the web, go to Google Books, you might find this, or you might find something that looks a little different. As we know, the world of genealogy and with online stuff, appearances are going to change constantly, but typically the functionality doesn't change. So what you're going to see, there's covers for some of the books. It has the titles on it. And then you can see there's differing levels indicated. You have viewing, and I want to talk a little bit about that, because unlike Internet Archive, where when I search, I can get to a book and then I can search, I can always search. In Google Books, you can't always fully access every book. So you can know it exists. So from this list, for road orders, I know there's early churches. So as we sometimes say, interlibrary loan is always an option if Google doesn't have it fully digital. That said, You do have a few choices in Google Books. It's not your choice, it's the choice of the publisher or the author, whoever owns the copyright. But every page will look the same. On the left-hand side, you have an image of the cover if they have it. You have the title of the book, and notice you have search in this book. So in that box, you can, again, put in a particular surname that you're looking for. Now, this is a preview version of a book, and what you can see is in the very middle, it says pages 22 to 225 are not shown in this preview. So telling us is they want to tantalize us, but they're not going to show us most of the book. And sometimes you'll just get the first few pages and the index. It really varies, but a preview means there's only going to be a few pages available. You're unlikely to probably find the person you're looking for, but you do know the existence of the book if you want to pursue it.
The cool part about this, though, even if it's just a preview, don't get discouraged for those who are watching, because if you go to the index, a lot of times the index is there, and you can peruse the index to see if maybe the location or, you know, specific subjects that you're looking for are in the book, and then you can pursue chasing the book further in whatever avenue that is, whether you buy it or go to the library or whatever.
Definitely. And that's what I always do, because now it gives me a reason to request interlibrary loan or go to purchase the book, because if I look at the index and know that it has my family, then I have a reason now to do that. And before, I might not have known the book even existed and had no idea what was in it. So it's definitely helpful. I always check out previews. Now, and you can see I printed out a page here. Now, the thing to recognize is even with a preview, notice these page numbers are not shown, as their list is not shown. But what happens sometimes is you get a kind of butchered text version of it. And sometimes from that, I can tell enough to know, is it the person I'm looking for? So like in this case, if I was searching Polly Madden and she was the daughter of Sarah Madden, or I thought she was, I already have enough information here to know this entry interests me. There's going to be something good for me. So it doesn't always mean, now for some books, you literally won't get anything here, but for some of these previews, you'll see a version of this. So it is worth searching on those names too, in addition to looking at the X.
You know, on those pages that you're showing right there, I have clicked on those pages before that say that they're not visible, and that one page was visible. Try that.
Yeah,
sometime.
I mean, Connie and I are the same. You got nothing to lose by not trying, you know? Right? It takes a moment, you know, click on it. The other thing I'll just mention right here too, sometimes there's more than one copy of the same book in Google Books. Because of differing repositories sharing what they have in their collections, you might find that there's 4 versions of this book here. And you may find that though this book is only a preview version, there might be another one that's a full version. So that's the other thing I look for is there multiple copies of the same book? And I'll check out each one if I'm not getting a better view. So preview is the simplest mode if you want to think about most limiting mode. Then you have what's called a snippet, I call it a snippet. They don't call it a snippet. What they do is they will show you these little snippets. So this again, I was looking at the Henry Watkins of Henrico County, and in this case, I've just searched on the word Henrico County. And what you'll see is instead of bringing up a full page of the book, or instead of bringing up a preview like we just saw, it's bringing up a tiny little snippet of where that term was found. Now, let me tell you, based on my experience, the word you're going to search for is going to be at the very beginning or the very end, and without enough context for you to figure out exactly what the information is. It's kind of, I have to laugh. It's uncanny that it knows, but there's ways around that. So what I'll also say is in the search box, if you search on something and then, you know, in this case, say Henry Watkins, you know, and this is a fairly, so the issue of blah, blah, Catherine Pride, whatever, I will then use those terms and put them in the search box to see if it gives me a slightly different snippet.
So tip for those watching at home, If you're going to do that, like she was showing Henry Watkins there, search Henry Watkins, Henry, whatever his middle initial is, Watkins, H. Watkins, because he may be referred to in multiple different ways in the same book, as I've learned with my own ancestors. So just another thought, you know, if you put it in quotes, Henry Watkins, then you might find every instance of Henry Watkins, but you might not find, if his middle name is Paul, let's say, you might not find every instance of Henry P. Watkins. So try all those different search possibilities, and you never know what you're going to find.
Oh, definitely. And the other thing I would add to that is also search on Watkins, comma, H quotation mark. See if it brings up an index page that you might not get by going directly. Then you might see the different way the names are listed or other names that are listed. So just, you know, just like with any search engine, play around with it a bit. Don't assume that it's going to give you what you want. Kind of brute force it a little bit and say, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm looking for. And that's why we keep track also of those name variants, because you want to make sure you're not just searching on one spelling and there's 4 other ones. So this is the kind of second level, and I called it the snippet view because it just shows you part of a page.
Keep in mind that a lot of the books on Google Books are not just part of a book, but the stuff that's in public domain, there's a lot of times you'll find the whole book there.
Oh, in fact, on yes, anything that can be publicly available can be an entire book. And what happens is just with Google, where Internet Archive, they are almost all complete books. Google just has these varying levels due to copyrights and who are their partners providing the information, etc. And what I wanted to share is we talked about these snippet views, we talked about the previews, but you also have the cases where there's just no preview. So for this book that I'm showing in the corner now, this Virginia Court Order book, see it says no preview. Well, part of that is it's a book created in 2015. So modern authors have a tendency to want to restrict access to their books because they want you to purchase it. So in this case, you know the book exists, you can't get a preview, so that tells you immediately you're just going to have to try to get it from the library, do interlibrary loan, or go purchase it. Those, you know, your options are more limited. That said, we go from no preview that you do sometimes have entire free Google ebooks. And on Google, they'll call them the ebook, and you can download those books in their entirety. So if you look at the soil survey at the top here, you can see where it says free Google ebook. And even though the copyright is for 1975, they have already verified that the copyright has lapsed or it's fallen into the public domain, because in this case, it was probably a government publication. Whatever's going on, they're very attentive to copyright law and making it available. Well, when you see something that says free Google ebook, or this one, the Annals of the Parish, what you then get are full pages. So nice. I'm showing you that I just searched on Henrico County just to so you could see how it gets highlighted. But if you see, every single page is like a hyperlink. Whenever you have this kind of blue text with a line under it, that typically means we can click on it, and when we click on it, we'll see the whole thing. Or what I want you to notice also is, see, it says ebook free. If I click over on that, I can download this whole book onto my own computer. Then I can store it however I want, and then I can search on it whenever I want to. And I have quite a few ebooks from Google in my collections. Why not? You know, they're easy to access. I can come in, and then again, since I can download it, I can save it however I want and do things with it.
That is Google. Was there anything else you wanted to share about Google?
No, that kind of covers it. Just go play with it.
Now I want to talk about HathiTrust. Is that how you
yes. So keeping with our theme of digitized book sources, one of the kind of newer places around, but it's been around a few years now. HathiTrust. I'm not, probably should have asked him how to pronounce it, but I'm going to say HathiTrust because I'm going to be very literal in how it's written. This is their digital library. So we've talked about Internet Archive, we've talked about Google Books, and now HathiTrust. And the reason I have put them in this order is for the amount of access you get. I find Internet Archive provides the greatest, broadest access. Google Books has those varying degrees of access, and HathiTrust has a tendency to have more materials that are a bit less accessible. But it's closer to Google in terms of that. So for example, sticking with my Henrico County examples here, I did a full text search on Henrico County. I added the word descendants. I just want to show you that up here. But I went minus wastewater because what I found is for Henrico County, when I first put it in, a lot of those government reports showed up. And that might be fascinating from a social historian perspective, but sometimes when I'm doing genealogy, I want to find out if there are records that are going to help me with doing that.
You don't have to want to, no pun intended, wade through all of that.
Yes, in more ways than one, shall we say. So yeah, I decided, so I just want to point out, because if anybody looks at this closely, they'll go, why did she go minus wastewater? It's not the typical word we think about. But what you can see here is, again, I get a list of books that are titled, there's copies of the cover showing if they have it. I get the description when it's published by who. And then what you're going to see is, notice these things where it says full view. So a full view, just like what we've seen elsewhere, that means that we'll be able to look at the entire volume, just like we were able to do on Internet Archive or on Google. Now, what you're going to also find on HathiTrust is you're going to find things that will say limited view, and you're going to say things that will also, it's like no view. So again, it's very similar to Google. So that's why I'm not going to show you more than this, because it would be beating the topic to death just a little bit. So, but again, those are three great resources that are all digitized books for the most part, though you might find reports and other print publications, or what were print publications at the time.
All right, so how does that differ from JSTOR?
So where JSTOR is different, and JSTOR is something that traditionally was a very academic website. And what they have been doing over the years is increasing personal access to the resources here. Because I think they've recognized that not every researcher is on a university. So historically, you had to be affiliated with a university or something similar in order to gain access to JSTOR. But now you don't. And I have been following them for a decade now, and I have loved the increased access. And probably the best way to tell you a bit more about JSTOR is to show you something. So sticking with my Henrico County, what you're going to see now is I can search on here journal articles. So what JSTOR has are more scholarly publications, to kind of use that term. So these are journals that were published.
I was going to ask you what JSTOR stands for, if you knew.
I honestly don't know. I have just always known it as JSTOR.
Yeah.
And so I've never, I think, I want to say, I think it's short for journal storage. Perhaps. I think that probably was some of its history, because its focus has been typically journals, scholarly publications. They do sometimes have ebooks and things like that now, but really its strength has always been journals. And that's actually its strength for genealogists, because if you look here, what you're finding are, there's articles about a particular family, and it's in the William and Mary Quarterly. You have things about court cases, it's in the Virginia Law Register. You also have, like here, another beginnings of its families in the William and Mary Quarterly. So there have been historical / genealogical publications that have been published across the country. And this is now giving us access to those, which we didn't have before. And I will tell you that Virginia definitely has very good coverage in JSTOR, not just with the William and Mary Quarterly, but with other publications. I will find abstracts of tax lists. You know, I will find details about deeds. I will find church records. There's just such a collection of materials that are in here. And I think I have a few more things to show. So here's another one, and what we're finding are inscriptions of gravestones. Well, nowadays, you know, we have our various tombstone projects and find a grave, etc. But at one point, you didn't have those. And the other thing to remember is this is something that was published in 1933. And there are a lot of tombstones who haven't survived from 1933 till today. So you may find that Find a Grave doesn't list everything if they didn't think to look at this particular article in their listing for the cemetery.
And sometimes tombstones are removed.
Yes.
I know the Quakers went through and wiped out a whole mess of their tombstones at a certain era in time when they thought that people were getting too precocious, I guess. I don't know, too much information on the tombstones. Their belief was to keep it simple. And
so kind of
too much stuff on your tombstone, they removed them.
Yeah, you know, and there's a lot of history, you know, so there's a lot of history behind that. So when you find some of these articles, and I know the WPA did a lot of tombstone transcriptions, definitely in North Carolina and elsewhere, but that was all 1930s covering pre-1920 typically. So looking at these older publications, it's a snapshot of information available at that time that may no longer be available to us now. And you can also see there's articles about the Tanner family. So if you're researching the Tanner family, the Hancock family, etc. So this is, you know, this is for one county in Virginia that I was just kind of looking at to see what kind of scholarly articles might be found. And then this is one of the neat finds for me because I was doing some very early colonial South Carolina research, and look, there's a whole article, and this is the South Carolina Historical and Genealogical magazine, stock marks recorded in South Carolina. And what you can do is when you find a particular publication, whether it's this one, William and Mary Quarterly, etc., you can also just search on those particular publications. So you can narrow your search to say, I just want to look in, you know, the William and Mary Quarterly for this particular topic. So it's really something that I talked about access before. It used to be you had to be a university or something. Now you get personal access. They keep kind of changing how personal access works. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But what I want you to see is on this search, I come up with this Williamson, Kennan, Price Bowling, Fleming article, Virginia Magazine of History and Biography. See where it says download PDF? That means you can download for free that article. Because you can also see, I'm going to show you other choices. So when you see download PDF, you can get that article for free. So see, it says free here and it says download. All you have to do is give them your name and email to get this kind of access. You know, there's nothing, I do not pay a fee, never paid a fee to JSTOR to try to access these articles.
And look, it says cite this item. Don't you love it?
Yes.
They're going to give you the source citation.
They're going to give you the source citation, and by giving them your name and email, you can kind of save things onto a bookshelf.
Yes.
Gosh, so it's kind of creating a virtual bookshelf for yourself of certain articles. Now, they will limit that, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but for anything that's free, it doesn't matter because you can download this, you can have it, you can save it if you want. Now, some of the other options, because you notice this top one did not have the download PDF darkened. So it's not an option. I couldn't click on it. It's grayed out. Whenever you see grayed out things, that's normally not good for you because you can't actually download it. But if I click on it, that's the box I'm showing you here. Now what you can see is there is a read online option, or you can download it, or you can subscribe to it. So again, this is based on the fact that you can do subscriptions now as an individual. You can download the article if you want to, but you can also just read it online, and that's at no cost to you. So you can sit there and go, I want to read about the Tanner family. I think that could be my Tanner family. you can, if nothing, read it online and then decide, boy, that is my family. I do want to pay, you know, the $9 to download it. But you literally can flip page to page through this book. Now, one thing I will tell you is, though there's a search function in JSTOR and you can search on things and it will sort of get you to the article, sometimes you have to flip through the articles page by page to actually find what you're looking for. I have had really mixed success with searching within an article and getting it to actually get me to the item. So I just want to mention that. So just be prepared that you might get to an article, but most articles just aren't really that long. Because they're in these scholarly publications, they have a tendency to be 10 pages. So when we click on read online, this is the page we'll be taken to. You have the title of the article, you have the publication and all those source citation details. And as you'll see here, I'm on the very first page of the article. And it's 8 pages, and I can use the caret key to click through it. So I am looking at that article, and this has not cost me anything. I just can't download it at this point, etc. But like I said, I use JSTOR this way all the time. Now there's also another feature, and you notice here, see it says 5 to 6 free article views remaining. So typically as an individual, I can get 6 free article views each month, which is good because it used to be I could only get 3. So I actually can get more. It's nice. And I'll put another article, another artifact in here. You may find, depending when you're watching this video and what the circumstances are, that due to the COVID-19 that we're experiencing right now, they have extended this limit to 99 articles.
Wow.
Because JSTOR is trying to support everybody who's at home doing schooling, college students that are at home, you know, basically the broader community. So I think that is really smart on their part, and it's something that we can take advantage of. I suspect that will stay true for a bit, you know, as long as I think schools are not open. They will provide that increased access. And trust me, I can survive on 6 articles a month. So if the number continues to remain pretty high, you can really gain a lot of really excellent access.
That is really great news.
I think I've made the point here. I think what I did is I just brought this back up again for a minute to show you when you had that free, that when you download an article from JSTOR, it always has a cover sheet like this.
Oh, wonderful.
So it also, what's great about it, it gives you all that source citation information. It also tells you the URL where you got it from. So somebody else could come back if they want to pursue it. So I just wanted to share that with you. And as Connie mentioned, the last thing I'm going to talk about at the moment is the Wayback Machine. And the Wayback Machine just keeps getting better and better. It is actually linked to the Internet Archive, which is the first thing we talked about. So if you see, it says Internet Archive and now Wayback Machine. Very
simple.
simple.
Those that are not familiar with Wayback Machine, what exactly is it?
So Wayback Machine, the way to think about it is, think of every single time you go to click on a web page that you have a URL for, and it says page not found, or 404 error, 405 error, whatever, all those horrible error messages you get of broken looking things, etc. This is a way that we might be able to get back to that page as part of the Wayback Machine. So think of it as an archive for web pages, of historic web pages. And I will share/torture you with a few of versions of my old websites. So
that is too funny.
Yeah, I just, you know, I figure why not, right? If you can't poke fun at yourself sometimes, go for it. And it's a very simple thing. You literally just put the website that you have from the document, etc., and you put it in here. But I'll also show you a really neat Chrome feature in a moment. So this is the Wayback Machine. This is my business, mosaicrpm.com, and you can tell I did the screen capture at the end of last year. My web page has existed since 2004. So what I can do is for every period of time, for each of these years, you get a calendar showing up, and every time there's a circle on it, you could click on that. That's going to be a version of that web page. That was a snapshot taken at that time. So if I click on January 28th of whatever 2000, I'm seeing a version of what my web page looks like sort of now. It's been updated since then. I did update it at the end of the year, but this is sort of what it looks like. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing that snapshot that was done at that point. Now, let's go back to 2011. We're going to do a nostalgia, visit here. And I'm looking for a website, my website back then. A practical consideration of this, besides me wanting to do nostalgia and see my website, sometimes what happens on a web page is the web page may have gone down in 2015, but you still had it existing with 405 or 404 or, an error message for 4 years. So you look at it in 2019 and all you're seeing is the error message. 2018, the error message. So what I'll do sometimes is then jump backwards and go, okay, let me find it when it really existed and now come forward. Because there's a lot of web pages that still had remnants surviving on the web for years, but you can't get anything out of it. There's no information. So that's what I use it for sometimes. Is I like this date feature because I want an older version of the website. I want a version of it before either they change something or it disappeared. So if we go to February 2nd, 2011 now, we see an older version of my website. And you can tell I do think I improved it at least with the newer version. I like to think I gained something in those few. I had to redo my website like 4 times because the software kept going obsolete. It was just a nightmare for a non-website designer person. I am a genealogist. Oh my gosh. It's a lot of work, and it still is. That's why I don't update mine except a couple of times a year nowadays. Now, the other thing, what I was mentioning is there's a Google Chrome extension, and this just makes it so easy. So if you use Google Chrome and you go to their Chrome web store, you can get a Wayback Machine extension. And what happens is it shows up on here's my Google Chrome and there's my Wayback Machine. I can click on that if I want to directly go to Wayback Machine. So what the real power is that if I go to a web page, like for example, I went to one of my old web pages, which I know does not exist anymore because I removed it. It was called Cards by Alicia, linked to my daughter. Notice this box that comes up and it says page not available. A version of this page has been saved by the Internet Archive Wayback Machine. Click here. If I click to see the archive version, it takes me directly to the Wayback Machine, to that version of that web page.
Nice.
So that's a great power. So you don't have to determining whether the URL works or not. You can just search on it like you would, put it in. Then when it fails, you will hopefully get this box showing up, and then you can just click on it. And then it will take you. Now, in this case, it actually took me to a slightly different version of my website, which is my in-between type thing. But again, it's what's really nice is I don't have to ask myself up front, does this URL work or not for this web page? I just put it in to Chrome. Then when it fails, I get the box up from Wayback Machine, and then it now directly takes me to that website as its archive. The thing to remember is that an archive web page may not have all its functionality. So for example, I have a search box here, or sometimes people have a hidden database. That stuff or that functionality may not always remain, but I always look because sometimes parts of it do. So sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, but I can still sometimes see what I want to see enough to go, oh, that's why I want to go to this website. It has this, and get the information I need. And then I can go look for the originals or something. So again, as we were talking about before, it's always worth a try. So even if I see search engines and other stuff and I'm not sure they'll work, give it a whirl. Worst case you're going to do is get this page was not saved message.
Well, I'm not going to let you get away with it that fast because I have questions. Let's pretend for a moment, I've got this question. It's just been killing me the whole time, time you've been going through this. So you are now in research mode and you're thinking, okay, I want to go find my Tanner family. And you're thinking, okay, Connie tells me I always have to have a research plan. So at what point do you put this kind of stuff, the Internet Archives or the Google Books or the JSTOR or whatever, when do you put that into your research plan as you're chasing the Tanner family or whatever your research question is?
So I do it's kind of an in-between stage. You need to have enough information to know who you're looking for, where and when. So I know I'm doing the Tanner family and it's Henrico County. I've probably already looked at Ancestry to see if people have some trees up or if I have some family papers to tell me everything. So I sort of have an outline of this family or a problem I want to solve with it. Well, we all know that looking at a book that's been indexed or typed is easier than looking through original records, unless there happen to be highly organized records. Some records are highly organized, there's an index in them, but sometimes there's not. So that's when I like to go find out and see, are there these digitized books or journal articles? Because I want to see, has somebody either pursued the Tanner family, or in Henrico County, they have abstracted church records, because church records are incredibly difficult to often get your hands on. Have they abstracted church records that mention my Tanner family? Mm-hmm. And then I can sit there and go, great, they've abstracted them. Now I can go get the original, because I would rather find out what somebody else has already culled out there for information. Then my next step will be, well, let me get originals of what the books have told me or the articles have told me. Then I know what original documents I'm going to need to look through myself. And I just know that's probably going to be more time consuming to do. So that's kind of where I fit it in. I try to see if I can cheat my research a bit by finding out what somebody else has already pulled together that might help me.
It's all part of that going further, faster, and factually, right?
Oh, definitely. And being incredibly efficient, because we're all busy. There's
well,
only so
I know, and and the reason why I ask that question is because I always like to see how other researchers do their research. But one of the ways that I use these resources is when I'm kind of doing the cluster research, but when I'm researching the community, because to me, part of cluster or fan club research is researching the whole community. For example, I have been researching the Randolph County, North Carolina area for a while because I'm trying to find almost every Henley in the area, which there are thousands. And so what I will do is I will go to repositories like this in order to research more about Randolph County. And then once I'm there in the Randolph County books or whatever, I'm then searching all of those surnames that I'm looking for. And even the Wayback Machine, I found stuff for Randolph County, for example, on the Wayback Machine from genealogists like ourselves who have put up family history websites and then maybe died. And the family took down the website, and it's definitely there. I've also found old, using some of those same techniques, old forums like on Ancestry.com or old threads of people having a conversation about a family, using the Wayback Machine for one, because maybe those forums or those threads have gone away. And talk about dating me like CompuServe.
Well, and they have it. And the other thing is that you mentioned context. That's the thing I'm often looking for is, yes, I love to find out they have a tax list for 1714 that somebody's abstracted for who I'm looking for, the Tanner family. That makes me excited. But also it's just finding out what are the place people have already looked into in some depth, so I can get historic context to know. Also, sometimes you read and find out there are no church records for that church until 200 years later. Okay, so I may hypothesize that this family participated in this church. I might never be able to prove it, but I can include a statement to say that it was the religion that was associated with them, but there are no records. We can't go further type thing. So, and like I said, it's like having a huge library at your fingertips, and it's actually broader North Carolina research. The Government Heritage Library for the State Library of North Carolina has a tremendous collection of county books. The thing is those are books that are identified as being for that county specifically, and that's how they're grouped. But when we're doing research, you have a lot of things that are created that don't either have the word county in the title, never make it to even the state library because they were privately published, they're out of publication, they might have done 4 versions for their family. You know, there's just all these materials that have been created that we may not be able to get access to even at the best physical library in the world. Even at Family Search and Salt Lake City, they don't have every book ever published that might have be important to us. So by going to Internet Archive, HathiTrust, you know, and even those old journals, I can't access them on the ground necessarily. So to me, it's a smart way to research further, as you say. And definitely faster because I'm using them to take advantage of what other people have done so that when I have to look at original records, I'm very focused.
Part of my strategy in researching is making the software do the work for me. And this certainly is one of those time-saving things. I do it with everything I do, from Excel to internet and to Ancestry and such. So I'm a bit of a nut when it comes to learning how to search, because it can be a huge time saver. This has
Definitely
been fun.
It has. I mean, who doesn't want to sit at home and find online resources that you can just play with? And then, like you said, have a Google Chrome extension that saves you from yourself when you're looking for things. And, you know, there's too many hidden gems on the internet. And I figure these are tools to help us hopefully access more of them. So,
well, this has been great. I hope you'll come back and do more.
You know, you just have to ask.
Okay. Come back and do another one, would you?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Diane Richard, for a great show. While we all like to get out to the archives and libraries, many of us are shut down due to the coronavirus, so this information might just be the key to your success. Consider supporting Genealogy TV and becoming a channel member. You can learn more by clicking on the Join button. As promised, here's how anyone can get Diane's downloadable document. There's links in the show notes below, or you can go to the blog post at genealogytv.org and get information for any of the videos in the blog post area there. There are more videos on the screen for you now that may help you with your family research. All right, it's time for you to go find your ancestors. So until next time, keep on climbing your family tree.